What appeared on that courtroom screen would be screenshot over 100 million times, analyzed by forensic accountants, and destroy a billion-dollar family's carefully constructed image in less than 45 seconds. A single bank transfer, one transaction, one line of digital evidence that proved everything the billionaire's son had denied under oath was an elaborate, calculated lie. Tristan Blackwell III sat at the defendant's table in a $15,000 suit, designer sunglasses perched on his head despite being indoors, his $200,000 watch catching the courtroom lights with every dismissive gesture. At 28 years old, he was the heir to the Blackwell Technologies fortune, worth an estimated $3.2 billion. He'd never heard the word no from anyone who mattered, never faced real consequences, never been in a room where money and family name didn't make problems disappear. Across from him sat Marcus Reynolds, a 56-year-old former software engineer, wearing a JCPenney suit and carrying a worn briefcase that contained 5 years of careful documentation. Marcus had worked for Blackwell Technologies for 12 years before he was fired, his reputation destroyed, and his career ended by accusations he knew were lies. Tristan was being sued for $2.5 million. Marcus's life savings, his severance, and his reputation, all stolen through fraud and defamation. Tristan had brought 3 lawyers who charged $200 per hour. He radiated the kind of arrogance that comes from never losing anything that money couldn't replace. What Tristan didn't know was that Marcus had spent 5 years tracing a single financial transaction. And when that bank transfer appeared on the courtroom screen behind Judge Judy's bench, Tristan's smirk would vanish, his lawyers would go silent, and the empire his family had built on deception would start its very public collapse. All because an entitled billionaire's son made one fatal mistake. He called Judge Judy old news. Before I show you the bank transfer that destroyed a billionaire's son who thought he was untouchable, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you've ever seen privilege meet accountability, or if you believe digital evidence doesn't lie, hit that subscribe button right now. What happens when that screen lights up is the most devastating financial exposure in courtroom history. Here's how a loyal employee ended up suing the son of a billionaire who thought money made him invincible. 7 years earlier, Marcus Reynolds had been a senior software engineer at Blackwell Technologies, a company founded by Tristan's father. Marcus wasn't just good at his job, he was exceptional. He'd developed 3 proprietary algorithms that became core to the company's flagship product. Generating hundreds of millions in revenue, Marcus had invention assignment agreements like all employees, meaning his work belonged to the company. He was fine with that. He was paid well, had equity, and was promised a senior VP position when the company went public. Then Tristan Blackwell III joined the company after graduating from Harvard Business School. Daddy gave him a VP title and a mandate to modernize operations and cut costs. Tristan's first move was to identify the company's most valuable intellectual property. His second move was to create a shell company in the Cayman Islands. His third move was to transfer those IP assets, including Marcus's algorithms, to the shell company for pennies on the dollar. His fourth move was to license them back to Blackwell Technologies at inflated rates, pocketing the difference. It was a classic self-dealing scheme, illegal, fraudulent, and potentially worth hundreds of millions to Tristan personally. But Tristan needed a scapegoat. Someone to blame when the accounting irregularities were eventually discovered, someone expendable. He chose Marcus. Tristan fabricated evidence suggesting Marcus had been stealing company secrets, planning to sell them to competitors. He created fake emails, planted documents, built an entire false narrative. Marcus was fired for cause, losing his equity and severance. Worse, Blackwell Technologies sent letters to every tech company in the industry, claiming Marcus was a corporate thief. His reputation was destroyed. His career was over. At 51 years old, he couldn't get hired anywhere. Marcus knew the truth. He'd kept copies of everything, mails, documents, code repositories, and he'd noticed something. A single wire transfer from Blackwell Technologies to a Cayman Islands account processed the same day Tristan's shell company was created. Marcus spent 5 years working construction jobs, living in a studio apartment, and using every spare dollar to hire forensic accountants and lawyers. He traced that wire transfer through 4 different jurisdictions. He proved the shell company was Tristan's. He documented the entire fraud scheme, and he sued. Tristan's response? "My lawyers will crush this pathetic attempt at extortion." But the case made it to Judge Judy's courtroom, and Tristan was about to learn that some judges don't care how much money your daddy has. Judge Judy reviewed the case file with the intensity of someone who'd spent decades crushing entitled rich kids who thought rules didn't apply to them. "Mr. Blackwell," she began, "Mr. Reynolds is suing you for $2.5 million. claiming you orchestrated a fraud scheme that stole his work, destroyed his reputation, and ended his career. What's your response? Tristan's voice carried the bored confidence of someone who'd never been challenged. Your Honor, this is a disgruntled ex-employee trying to get money he didn't earn. My company fired him for cause stealing proprietary information. We have documentation of his theft. This lawsuit is frivolous harassment. He gestured dismissively. Frankly, I don't know why this case wasn't thrown out before reaching your courtroom. My legal team has already prepared appeals because this is clearly— Mr. Blackwell, Judge Judy interrupted. I'll decide what's frivolous. Continue. Tristan sighed like he was explaining something to a child. Look, the tech industry has moved on. These old-school employment disputes are boring. The business world doesn't work the way it did in like the 1990s. No offense, but some of these employment laws are just old news. The courtroom went silent. Judge Judy's expression didn't change. Old news. Tristan shrugged. I mean, with respect, the way we do business now is different, faster, more innovative. These cases about who invented what and who owns what, they're from another era. We're talking about modern tech, modern business structures. It's complicated. Maybe too complicated for— He caught himself, but the damage was done. Too complicated for what? Mr. Blackwell. For traditional legal frameworks, he finished smoothly, but everyone in the courtroom knew what he'd almost said. Too complicated for an older judge to understand. Judge Judy's smile could have frozen nitrogen. I see. Well, let's look at this modern, complicated business structure of yours. Mr. Reynolds, you mentioned a bank transfer in your evidence. Marcus opened his briefcase. Yes, Your Honor. On March 15, 7 years ago, Blackwell Technologies transferred $47.5 million to a Cayman Islands account. A transfer memo listed it as IP asset restructuring. Tristan's lead lawyer spoke up. Your Honor, that was a legitimate corporate restructuring. Completely legal. Companies transfer assets between subsidiaries all the time. To subsidiaries owned by the CEO's son, Judge Judy asked. The ownership structure is complex. Let's make it simple, Judge Judy interrupted. Bailiff, put Mr. Reynolds' Exhibit 47 on the screen. The screen behind Judge Judy's bench lit up with a bank transfer document. Every detail was visible: the amount, the date, the account numbers, and most importantly, the recipient from Blackwell Technologies corporate account to Horizon Ventures Limited, Cayman Islands, 47,500 in transfer. Patents US 8847392, US 8923847, US 9012847. Judge Judy read aloud. Patents US 8427347 and US 9012347. Mr. Reynolds, are those your algorithms? Yes, Your Honor. Those are the 3 patents filed based on my work at Blackwell Technologies. Judge Judy turned to Tristan. And Horizon Ventures Limited, who owns that company? Tristan's face had gone pale. His lawyer tried to speak, but Judge Judy held up her hand. Mr. Blackwell, who owns Horizon Ventures. Silence. Marcus calmly handed another document to the bailiff. Your Honor, this is the corporate registry from the Cayman Islands. Horizon Ventures Limited was incorporated 6 weeks before that wire transfer. The sole director and shareholder is Tristan Blackwell III. The screen updated to show the incorporation documents. Tristan's signature was clearly visible. Judge Judy's voice was ice. So you transferred $47 million worth of IP assets, created by Mr. Reynolds, to your own shell company for which Blackwell Technologies received what in return? Marcus answered. According to the licensing agreements I obtained, Horizon Ventures now licenses those patents back to Blackwell Technologies for $8 million annually. Money that goes directly to Mr. Blackwell's personal account. That's a standard corporate structure, Tristan stammered. Lots of companies do IP holding structures in the Cayman Islands for tax purposes. Do lots of companies transfer assets to entities secretly owned by the CEO's son without board approval or disclosure? Judge Judy asked. Because I have your company's SEC filings here. This transaction wasn't disclosed. This subsidiary wasn't disclosed. This conflict of interest wasn't disclosed. She held up documents. In fact, the same week you created your shell company and transferred these assets, you were signing affidavits as a company officer, certifying that all related party transactions had been properly disclosed. That's securities fraud, Mr. Blackwell. Federal securities fraud. Your case is dismissed. Mr. Reynolds' counterclaim is granted in full, $2.5 million in damages. Furthermore, Mr. Blackwell, I'm ordering the court to forward copies of this bank transfer, your incorporation documents, and the licensing agreements to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the IRS, and the Department of Justice. Judge Judy's voice hardened. You called me old news. Let me show you how old-fashioned consequences work. You committed fraud. You committed securities violations. You destroyed a man's career to cover it up. And you thought money and arrogance would make it disappear. This court is adjourned. Tristan sat frozen as his lawyers frantically whispered. Marcus's hands were shaking, but this time from relief. 7 years of fighting, 7 years of being called a liar. Vindicated in 45 seconds by a bank transfer that Tristan had thought was hidden forever. The clip exploded. 100 million views in 10 days. Bank transfer justice trended globally. Finance professors used it to teach about self-dealing schemes. The SEC opened a formal investigation within a week. The DOJ followed. Blackwell Technologies Board suspended Tristan and launched an internal audit. Shareholders filed a class action lawsuit. Marcus received his $2.5 million judgment. Tristan's shell company assets were frozen. His father publicly disowned him. The Blackwell family empire faced existential crisis. Marcus used part of his settlement to create a legal fund for tech workers fighting IP theft. He was hired by a major firm as a senior consultant on corporate fraud cases. One bank transfer, one screen. One judge who didn't care about billions. Old news delivered new justice. If this felt like justice, destroy that like button. Comment follow the money if digital evidence just ended entitlement. Scuster for more receipts. Next, a CEO's deleted Slack messages that the IT department recovered. Money can't delete truth.